Okay, let's begin. This is, since tonight is Purim Katan, and we know that Alter Rebbe brings it down the Siddur, that when it comes to Purim Katan, we mark it by not saying Tachnun, so it's a very significant day, and the Rebbe is going to bring down what it says at the end of Orach Chaim, what the Ramah says about how you're supposed to mark and celebrate Purim Katan. So this is going to be really the whole focus of the Sikha, is going to be about how Purim Katan really informs us and also inspires Simcha throughout the entire year. And that's why specifically the idea of Toiv Lev Mishtah Tamid that we're going to talk about is that in the halachas of Purim Katan at the end of Orach Chaim. So he says like this, Aleph, B'soif Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Mefios ha'halachas shel Purim Hilchas Megillah, u'besiman ha'achron medubar al adinim shel Yud Talad v'Tesvav Adar Rishon. So what you have is, the Shulchan Aruch, as we know, it is divided into 4 sections. Orach Chaim, which deals with the daily life of a Yid, including Shabbosim and Yom Tovim and so on, plus the daily cycle. Then you have dinim that have to do with Yeridea, has to do with Isser V'Heter, kosher food and other types of things that have to do with prohibited and permitted things. Then you have Even Ezer. Even Ezer deals with marriage related laws, etc. And then you have Choshen Mishpat, which is about legal, civil court cases and things like that. So Orach Chaim is really like the one that's directly applicable on a day-to-day basis to every single Yid. A person's not going to need the whole Even Ezer, a person's not going to need the whole Yeridea, a person's not going to need the whole Choshen Mishpat, but Orach Chaim is what a Yid lives through. It's his life. It's his path of life. And the reason why the halachas of Purim Katan are the last siman of Orach Chaim, so he says, Asiba lakach b'pashtasi, mishum shebetur b'Shulchan Aruch. The Tur was the one that divided the Shulchan Aruch into these 4 sections. And then the big Shulchan Aruch, written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, followed that division of 4 sections, and so the Alter Rebbe, and so on. So he says, so b'Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, mefias ha'halachas shel moed ha'ashana l'fi seder ha'ashana. You have first, before you have the Yom Tovim, you have the day. So it starts from the morning and concludes to the night. It also goes on Shabbos. Then it goes according to the different occasions during the year. The Moed HaShana, it appears. Then it goes Tfilas Rosh Chodesh, or Lacher Mekain, it starts from Nisan Hilchas Pesach v'chulu, or Lefi Seder Zeh, Nikvu Din Purim B'Saf. Because if you start from Nisan, Chodesh Zeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, so if Nisan is the first month, so when do you finish? You finish Adar. So Purim is all the way at the end of Orach Chaim. Amnam Yudalad V'Tesvav Adar Rishon Kaidmin Bezmanon B'Shana Mu'beres LePurim Sheb'Shana Shabbat Sheni. In a year where there's a leap year, so really what's coming first? Purim Katan. And in Shulchan Aruch, when is Purim Katan and Shushan Purim Katan discussed? After discussing the regular Purim. The reason for that is, Achlam Rois Zois Mafim Dinam Elo Besim Hilchas Megillah Ki Heim Einam Cholim Bechol Shana Ki Im Beshana Mu'beres Bovad Shum Kach Koiden Lam Dinei Purim Acholim Bechol Shana. There is a halacha or an idea that's brought down in Chazal, Tadir V'She'ena Tadir Tadir Koidem. So, for example, in benching, when Rosh Chodesh comes out on Shabbos, so you will say first Ritzei, and then you'll say Yalav V'Yavi. Why? Because Shabbos is Tadir, and Rosh Chodesh is not as Tadir as Shabbos, so therefore it comes second. The same thing. The Shushan Purim Katan and the Purim Katan is something that only comes out once every few years, so that's why it is preceded. You first have the halachas of Purim, and then you have the halachas of Purim Katan, even though on the calendar they come in the first Adar, not in the second Adar. Another reason you could say why Purim Katan comes second after that, Sheprate hadinim yudalad v'tesvav Adar Rishon v'din tainis v'hesped bahem. There's different halachas. Are you allowed to fast on Purim Katan? Are you allowed to make hespedim on Purim Katan? Hem toitzah shel mitzvos v'adinim shel Purim. These are a result of the mitzvahs and the halachas of Purim. There's more copies, no? Here's another set of copies. Kiloimar, halachas shu yudalad v'tesva Avodah rishon. Nobody's sitting there. Oh, you're reading from there. Halachas shu yudalad v'tesva Avodah rishon. That ain't noiflim al pneiyam, you don't say tachim. Ve'ein oimrim mizmer yan chashem yem tzari, you don't say lam ratzeach kapitel chaf over there before Volzin. Vasurim behesped v'tainis, the reason why I'm Purim Katan and Shulchan Purim Katan, you're not allowed to eulogize, you're not allowed to fast. Einam noivois miyamim elu kishal atzmam. It's not that the day itself is a day that doesn't have tachim and so on. Elu kitaitzah mimea Purim. So since it's a taitzah, since it's a result of Purim, so first you got to tell us the halachas of Purim, the regular Purim. The regular Purim, all of these things you don't do. So as a result of it, in a year where you have a leap year, and then you have Purim Katan, so then you also don't do it. So that's why in Shulchan Aruch he puts first the halachas of the regular Purim, and then he puts the final halachas in Orach Chaim, he puts the halachas of Purim Katan and Shulchan Purim Katan. V'lechein he mefias la'achar halachas yudal v'tesvav Avodah stam, shekein halachas shel faneinu, ba'is k'teitzah shel yemei ha'purim ha'ikrim asher cholim b'shana zu ha'mu'beres ba'adur shein. Here the Rebbe now goes into a deeper idea. If it's there, right? You have all types of reasons why it's there. But everything must have a deeper meaning to it as well, and a deeper lesson to it as well. Beram, calling Yane HaTorah Mediyakim L'chalutim, Kivishanitin Lilmud Bekal V'chaymer Min Yane HaOlam. Shekal Davar Ba'olam Hu B'ashgacha Pratis B'kavana Mediyakis. So if everything in the world is exact, and everything in the world is B'ashgacha Pratis, ולכן מובן שהעניין שדיני הפורים מופיעים בסיום חלק הרחיים ועשיים בהם עצמם ודווקא בדיני פורים קטן יודלת דזבוב אדרישן אין רק משום סדר המועדים מן המוקדם על המוך אי באדר עצמם מטעם תדר חולו וממילא הם באים בסוף הרחיים אלא יש בכך גם כוונה מיוחדת. There's a special reason, a special idea why Purim and especially Purim Katan have to be at the end of Orach Chaim. There's a special message, a special idea behind it. Bekach shedafke dinim elu metavim es asiyum va'achoisem shel chelek Orach Chaim misbate inyan beseder Orach Chaim shel ha'adam bechlal ki hakoil hoilech achar achitum. The Chazal say that everything follows the conclusion. Whatever happens at the end, that follows, and that is what everything else follows after. So the fact that we put these halachas of Orach Chaim, why is it called Orach Chaim? Because it's the path, it's the life of a person. And we put it at the end of those things that the life of a person is about, that indicates how the whole life of a person, what is it about? It's about the halachas of Purim, especially the halachas of Purim Katan, as he will explain. Ois beis. L'chura nitn levayer zois bem tzois, hezber toichniam shel hamilim ha'achroines shebehem mesayim haramah es chelek Orach Chaim. The Ramah, which is the glosses on Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, the Beis Yosef wrote the etzem of the Shulchan Aruch. But we follow what the Ramah writes, Rav Moshe Yisraelish. There's an expression, Chol Yisrael Yotzim B'yad Ramah. Ramah is Maramas and Ramah, that we follow the Shita of the Ramah, and this is the gang of Ashkenazim, etc. So Yesh Oimrim Shechayev Laharbis. This is the quote from the Ramah. B'mishta v'simcha b'yudal b'adar rishon, and then he says v'ein noyagim kei. So there's some people that say that tomorrow, we need to have a special meal. L'kavod Purim Katan. And then he says the custom is not that way. Mikol Malkim, even though the custom is not to follow this opinion, Yarbek Tzas Besuda. Kedei Lotzis Yedei HaMachmirim. To be able to be Yoitze, according to the opinion of those that are Machmir, we should also we should also be marbe, we should also increase also in the Suda. You want to make more copies?
So you should.
So he says, Lepoyel, you should add a little bit more.
The Ein Noegen King, who's saying that?
The Ramah says that Ein Noegen came, but then he says further, but a little bit you should be marbe.
The Alter Rebbe, what does he say?
The Alter Rebbe doesn't have halachas. So, in other words, like this, the Ramah is saying a few things. The Ramah is saying that you have to increase, you have to have a lot of Mishtah v'Simcha, and the Ramah says that the minig is not that way, and then he says, but you want to be Yotze, even according to that opinion, so you should be Marbe K'tzas. You should add a little bit. I see you brought your father.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
For the shir, from Israel.
Especially from Eretz Yisrael, flew in for the shir. 2 people from Tzfas flew in especially from Israel for the shir. How do you like that?
2 people from Ascent.
2 people from Ascent, even better. And why? And he concludes, V'toiv leiv mishta Tamid. This pasuk is a pasuk in Mishlei, and this concludes the whole Orach Chaim. The word Tamid and V'toiv leiv mishta Tamid is the conclusion of the entire Orach Chaim. V'namar b'sfarim sh'achsima shel Ramah hi me'ein ha'psicha shel Orach Chaim. Even more, they say that the Ramah had a very big chachma in this, that he was very wise in this, that he actually did so, that he connected the beginning and the end. How did he connect it? Ha'psicha hi shivisi Hashem lנגדי Tamid. He begins with the word Tamid, that you always have to have Hashem in front of you. V'asiyum hu v'toiv leiv mishta Tamid. Pamayim Tamid keneged shnei tmidim kesidram shnaim layoim Tamid. The same thing, the Ramah, in Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim tells us we have to have these 2 Tamids. We have to have them constantly. These are the bookends of Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Tamid and Tamid. So it's a cute thing, but the question is, what is the meaning? What's the idea behind it? What does he want with this idea?
Isn't the first beginning of Gibur Kari, it's the first thing in Orach Chaim?
Again, in the Shulchan Aruch, the way he begins, in the big Shulchan Aruch, he starts with Shivisi Havaya Lנגדי Tamid, that a person has to place the Eibishter constantly before him. I didn't look inside the lashon of the Orach Chaim. I have to look again inside.
And it goes just Ketzvi Gibur Kari.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot.
Again, the Alter Rebbe could be a different seder. I don't remember. Echad has beirim lakachu. So what's the explanation? What's the connection between these 2 Tamids? Chelek Orach Chaim oisik b'mitzvah u'b'halachas sha'adam tzarech l'kaimon yom u'b'meshach chol hayomim. Like we said before, it's the daily cycle. Me'eis kumay mishnasei b'boiker ad zman shchivasei b'layla. U'b'mitzvah hashana kula l'fi haseder. Like we said, he's going through the entire cycle of the day. He begins in the morning, concludes at night, then he goes through the weekly cycle and the yearly cycle. Dinim elu kshurim lezmanim mesiyamim b'meshach hayom v'halayla oy b'meshach hashana sha'oz chayavim l'kaimam ve'einam kshurim lezman achar b'meshach hashana. So, for example, the halachas that he says we need to do during the morning, we don't do during the night. The halachas that has to do with Shabbos, we don't do during the week. The halachas of Rosh Chodesh, we don't do during the rest of the month. The halachas of Pesach, we don't do on Sukkos. So every single section in Orach Chaim has to do with halachas, with particular time frame when these halachas apply. As opposed to the beginning and the end, they're both Tamid. The ilu aschala shel Orach Chaim v'chein shel ha'adam, the beginning of a person, v'siyumai hem shnei tmidim, just like in the Beis Hamikdash. How did the Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash begin? What was the first carbon? The Tamid Shel Shachar. What was the last carbon in the Beis HaMikdash that was brought? The Tamid of the afternoon, the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. The same thing, there is the constant Avodah of a Yid that goes through his entire day and his entire life. And for those things, he brings at the beginning and at the end the idea of Tamid. So he says, "Shecholim Tamid b'chol zman b'mechayev shel adam b'meshach kol hashana kula u'b'meshach kol hayom kula midayom b'yomay. V'lechein hem nikvu ba'ofen shetamid echad mefia kiroish v'aschala shel erchayim v'atamid hasheni mefia b'siyam v'choisem." We like surrounded by the Tamids. Tchilas ha-Shulchan Aruch shivisi Hashem lנגדי samid Hiyiras Hashem, kfi shemarich mefaret sham arama, ki sheyasem ha'adam ha'liboy, she'amelech ha'gadol ha'kadosh baruch hu, asher maloi kol ha'aretz kivoidei oimed olav, v'roeh b'maisav, miyad yagia elav ha'yira v'achna b'pacht Hashem yisbarach, u'bushasei mimenu tamid. So that's one constant thing. It doesn't make a difference if it's a weekday, if it's a Shabbos, if it's a Pesach, if it's a Sukkos, a Shavuos. If it's Purim, it's all the time we have the Shivisi Hashem lנגדי Summit. Vasiyum v'toiv leiv mishteh tamid hu inyan Simcha. And that also is not limited to a particular time of day or to pick a particular date on the calendar. Shnei inyanim elu tzrichim liyes eitz la'adam ba'ofen shel tamid b'chol zman b'chol avodah shepoel ha'yehudi tzarich lachush etzla yira v'achna. Simcha Hashem. And we find two psukim that are exactly the same. Ivdu es Hashem b'yira, without qualifier. It doesn't say when Ivdu es Hashem b'yira, all the time. And the same thing, it doesn't qualify Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, it's also all the time. These are two tamids that are not dependent upon time. Fizeh is Gimel. Yes, lavair madua mestayim chelek erchaim davke b'hilchs megillah Purim. Yadua shalachol sug miyuchad shal avodas Hashem. Yes, zman mesuyim b'shana hamasim b'miyuchad la'oifen zeh shal avodah haruchnias umizman zeh nishav koyach v'ashpa ba'avodas Hashem ba'oifen zeh b'meshach ha'shana kula. For example, the Alter Rebbe says that where do we take for the entire year the concept of Yiras Hashem, Yiras Shamayim? We take it from Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the time when we're Malchusei Beratzin Kibla Aleim. We accept Hashem as a king over us. So how do I have a Yira for Hashem when I'm standing in the middle of Tammuz? It came from Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah supplies that for the rest of the year. How do I have the idea of whatever Yitzias Mitzrayim Beruchnis is about? Breaking out of my limitations, breaking out of my boundaries. Where do I get that from? I get that from Pesach. Pesach enables us to be a Bnei Chayrin the entire year. So every Yom Tov has a certain energy that it supplies to the year, for the Yid, for the entire year. V'kach l'gaba simcha b'avodas Hashem. HaKoyach l'simcha b'avodas Hashem b'meshech hashana kulam v'toiv leiv mishteh tamid. The pasuk says that tamid, you have to be in a state of mishteh. You always have to be in a state of happiness. How do I get that? Where do I get the energy for that? Where do I get the inspiration that every day of the year I should be able to be in a way of toiv leiv mishteh? Nishav miyamei hapurim. Ki mimei hapurim marbim besuda ubesimcha b'mida hagdoila b'yoser. As we see, Purim is over the top in how much Simcha and how much Mishtah and how many Sudas we have on Purim. Yoser mikol chagi hashana kfi shenifsek la'alacha b'tur b'shulchan aruch mitzvah laharbis b'sudas Purim v'chayev vinish l'psumah b'paraya ad lo yada. A person is obligated to become intoxicated in Purim until he doesn't know to differentiate between Baruch, Mordechai, and so on. So now the Rebbe is going to say an interesting point. Isn't there another Yom Tov in the year that is also about Simcha and should also be the time when we get Simcha for the rest of the year? It seems to be we have two Yom Tovim that are doing the same job. Why? Nothing is extra in Yiddishkeit. We have Sukkos, we have Simchas Torah. Aren't those the Yom Tovim already to inspire us and give us Simcha for the rest of the year? What's so special about Purim? Why do we need to have another Yom Tov of Purim to be able to bring us to Simcha for the rest of the year? So he says, Ein stira ben kviyazu lebein amavur ben misparim kaimis shachag ha-Sukkos zman simchaseinu. In davening we call, on Sukkos davening we call Sukkos zman simchaseinu. Hu ha-makir le-simcha shachal shana kula. So how does it fit? Which is the source for Simcha? Is it Purim or is it Sukkos? Ukiyadua shakoyach le'inyonim haklolim ba'avodas Hashem noiveya ma'chodesh hakloli chodesh Tishrei. Chodesh Tishrei, which is also the same letters like the word Reishis, beginning, it includes in it all the types of avodah that we have to do throughout the year. And therefore, it's like the head of the year that gives energy to the rest of the body, to the rest of the year. Rosh Hashanah, Hazman Shtam D'chuni Aleichem, is like we mentioned before, Hu HaMakir L'Yir Shamayim B'Meshech Hashanah Kula. Yom HaKippurim, Makir L'Inyan Tshuva, meaning not just Tshuva on Yom Kippur, but in the rest of the year, when I want to do Tshuva, where do I get this energy, this chayas, this capability to be able to do Tshuva? I get it, even though it might be in the middle of Cheshvan or middle of Tammuz, I'm getting it from Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur supplies the energy for it for the whole year. Sukkos, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, Zman Simchaseinu, Nois Nimusakoyach Lakayim Torah Mitzvos V'Meshach Kol Shana B'Simcha. And not only that, but we even can derive this from the Rambam. The Rambam talks about the importance of Simcha in Avodas Hashem in general. But where does the Rambam talk about this? He doesn't talk about it, for example, in Hilchos Deis. Hilchos Deis is where it talks about general laws of how a person's supposed to act and their type of characteristics, an emotional type of way of serving Hashem. Where does he talk about serving Hashem b'simcha? He talks about at the end of Hilchos Lulav, at the end of Hilchos Sukkos. That's where he talks about simcha. So from the fact that the Rambam teaches us about Simcha for the entire year at the end of Hilchos Sukkos, Hilchos Lulav, that means he's trying to indicate that from Sukkos is when we get the energy for Simcha for the rest of the year. Let's see it inside. Ukenirmas b'divrei Rambam shesimcha shel mitzvah. HaSimcha sheyismach adam b'asiyas ha-mitzvah avodah gedolah, the Rambam says. Ba behemshech shel ha-simcha yiseidam shehoysa b'mikdash b'chag ha-Sukkos. So therefore, we see from all of these places that Sukkos and Simchas Torah is the source for Simcha for the entire year. On the other hand, here we're saying that Purim is the source for Simcha for the entire year. So which is it? So the Rebbe answers, V'yesh loymar, shezois davke betkufa shebeis hamikdash hayakayam, Sukkos and Simchas Torah had the capability to inspire us for Simcha for the rest of the year. Kasher kol yonim hayu kisikunam ubishleimusam oz kiblu chayis v'avodas Hashem b'meshech hashana kula mechage Tishrei v'asimcha b'avodas Hashem shava misimcha yiseida shahoysa b'migdash b'chag ha-Sukkos. In the Beis HaMikdash, that was such a powerful time of Simcha. Since it was such a powerful time of Simcha, so the Beis HaMikdash had this great energy to supply the Simcha from Sukkos for the entire year. But what happens when there's no Beis HaMikdash? So Sukkos is not the same Sukkos and doesn't have the same power like the Sukkos in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. Ach betkufas ha-Golus b'zman shel Helm v'Hester ein dai b'simcha shel Chag ha-Sukkos kedei lashpia al avodah shel Shana kula ki himotzos inyonim elu b'chodesh Tishrei hi kechayis shel kol ha'evarim hanimtzoyim b'rosh. We said Tishrei is also in the word Reishis, Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah. It's still the way it's still sitting in the head. It didn't yet come from the head to the rest of the body. Sheboya chayis naila mechdei lislabish lahachis sevarim shebeguf. V'kach b'nimshol in yonim elu b'avodas Hashem nimtzoyim b'chodesh Tishrei b'darge nailos b'yoyser mikdei lashmiya l'avodas proteos musuyames sheyiyah b'golui b'avodas Hashanah b'avodas ha'adam b'meshech Hashanah kula. This is too high to be able to influence the rest of the body. A lot of times we see that we can understand something intellectually, but we don't act on it. Why? Because the intellect is too removed, it's too high, it's too beyond the rest of the body. It doesn't imprint itself on the rest of the body. It doesn't impact and influence the rest of the body. Tishrei, nowadays, is too high and too elevated that it cannot necessarily share its simcha as well with the rest of the year. That's why we need to have something that's closer to us, something that's lower than the head of the year. Dafke something that's not part of the Chodesh HaKlali. Kach sheyuchlo lahavis makar v'nesinas koyach liyemei hashana. Ubinyaneinu hasimcha Tamid is v'meshach yemei hashana toiv leiv mishteh Tamid noivas amnam gam chag Sukkos ach be'emtzos hasimcha shel yemei Purim. Purim becomes like a channel. Purim is a tzinor, a pipeline to draw the simcha of Sukkos down from its very high level so it should be able to impact the rest of the year. Purim as a weekday. It's not part of the head of the year. It's not the Reishis Hashanah. It is a weekday that's specifically in a time of darkness. Not like Sukkos, that was a big simcha in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. It's a Yom Tov that came about in Golus. It's a Yom Tov in the times of Achashverosh when Yidden were in Golus Babel. V'yoser mekach Elohim yomim hamutarim ba'asiyas malacha ki yom macherim shal Hashanah. This shows that they're much more relatable. They're more down to earth because you can work on Purim. Not like some of the days of Sukkos and Simchas Torah where you can't work on those days. Purim has the capability to affect the Simcha Vayid even when he's in a weekday, even when he's in Golus, because Purim is like a weekday that you could do work. Purim was a Yom Tov that came about in the time of Golus. Sukkos is mainly from the Beis HaMikdash was the great big Simcha, or that was the ultimate Simcha. So it remains like beyond us. It's a day that we don't do malacha. We can relate to Purim. Purim informs us. Purim impacts us. The Rambam, when he talks about Simcha, talks about it in the halachs of Sukkos. The Shulchan Aruch, when it tries to teach you about Simcha, talks about it in Purim. Why? Harambam oisik b'sifrei bin yonim gam kifei shem b'tikunam b'tzloim musam koil tkuf sabayis. That's all I give the Rambam. The Rambam covers all the halachas, even those halachas of the times shebeis hamikdash hayakayim. Shebezman shebeis hamikdash kayim nesinas hakoyach l'simcha shel mitzvah misimcha yisayda shebechag haSukkos shebemikdash. So therefore, where does the Rambam talk about the idea of being besimcha when a person does a mitzvah? He talks about it besukkos because the Rambam is expressing how it is in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't talk about halachas that have to do with the times of the Beis HaMikdash. So up till now, he explains why we learn out this idea of Toiv Leiv Mishteh Tamid for the whole year, specifically from Hilchos Purim, at the end of the whole Avodah Chaim. Because this is what relates to us and impacts us with Simcha more than any other thing. But it still didn't answer about Purim Katan. Purim Katan is really the end, like we said. Purim Katan speaks about after the halachas of Purim. And only by Purim Katan does he use the word Tamid, Toiv Leiv Mishteh Tamid. In other words, only by Purim Katan do we learn out about the Simcha that has to be a whole year. So if so, what's the connection dafke with Purim Katan? Even more than Purim, the dafke from Purim Katan is that we're learning out this idea of the Mishteh Tamid, the Tamid liyas b'simcha for the whole year. Dalet. Ach ein dai behezber zeh ki bekach moven hakesher shel siyam Shulchan Aruch rak lepurim b'ofen klali. Achadayin in a moving, Madua, Mefia is Vesia, Shulchan Aruch, Davke, Hilchas Purim Katan. V'kivin shekol in Yonei HaTorah meduyakim k'lael, yesh loymar shel l'siyum oirachayim yesh kesher miyuchad mashboy shel Purim Katan. Its dafke has to do with the siyum of oirachayim, has to do with Purim Katan, not just Purim. So the Rebbe says like this, l'choyre yesh loymar, first he wants to say as follows, shahezber shehuver le'el sif gimel, Madgish afhu as a kesher shall asiyum dafke lepurim katan yois mashe purim b'chlal. Why? What did we try to say? Purim is closer to us. Why? Because it's a day that you could work. It's a yom tov that came about in Golus. Not like Sukkos that you can't work. Definitely not in Simchas Torah you can't work. And it's something that has to do mainly in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. So Purim Katan has a similar twist like this that makes it more so and more close to us than the regular Purim. So he says, Yoiser Masha Purim Bechlal, Ki Amnam Purim Mutabasiyas Malacha, Ach Bechol Zois, Zeu Yoim HaNivdol BeMitzvos Rabbis. Purim is full with mitzvahs. Kriyas Megillah, Mishloach Manes, Matans Lev Yoinim, Ubetfila, you got to add Alanisim, and so on, Uchidoimim. Asher Masikus as HaYehudi BeMeshach Roi Vayoim. And also he brings down that the minig is to avoid doing malacha then. And it's also brought down in halacha that we should make the Purim Suda like after Mincha time, because again, before, we're busy. We're busy with all the mitzvahs. V'ilu Purim Katan ein by mitzvahs miyuchades umshum kach. Ukarav yoyser al kol yimais hashana. V'lachein mashpia aleim yoyser b'inyan ha-simcha mishteh Tamid. So based on this idea, Purim Katan is even closer to us. It's more relatable to us. It's more down to earth to us. It's an ordinary, regular day. There's nothing else we do tomorrow on Purim Katan, right? And even though it's a regular day, we still have to be more besimcha. So this inspires us that a regular day, a Yud Gimel Cheshvan, a Tezvav Tammuz, a Chav Zayin Av, should be besimcha, because they're regular days and Purim Katan is a regular day. So it's much closer to a regular day of the week. So that's why we bring Purim Katan to be the last one to teach us about the Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, the Tamid aspect of Simcha. Ach ein loimer kach, ki Aleph, niten loimer zois, ach lefi adeus ha-soivris shechayev laharbis b'mishta v'simcha b'yud daled shebe'odar rishoin, ach harama mamshech v'oimer v'ein noyagin kein. Elarak yarbek tzas besuda kedei lotzes yidei machmirim. V'keitzad yigroim yoim zel lemishta tamid b'chol hashana kasher boy atzmo ein chayvas simcha. There's not even a chayv of being besimcha. The Ramah says it's not a minute to sit down to a meal. So even the simcha is not something that's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So how can from something that's not even brought down as Allah in Shulchan Aruch, it's just a pasuk, Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, how could that influence the Simcha for the entire year? Beis, v'ikr, keitzad yitachem loymar, shenesinas hakoyach lemishta Tamid, Simcha Tamid is b'chol shana v'shana, noivas mi Purim Katan hakayim rak b'shana mu'beres. What's going to be with the other years? What's going to happen with the years that's not a Shana Mu'beres? So how do you tell me that Purim Katan is closer to us than Purim Gadol and than Sukkos, and therefore it's going to act as a channel to bring the Simcha of Sukkos down? So what's going to happen all those years that there's no Purim Katan? So we have to look for an entirely different understanding of what we learn out and how we derive the idea of Simcha from Purim Katan. Kedei lahavim zayis, Yesh lehagdim ulevayir seif divrei Ramah v'toif leiv mishta tamid haroimzim kamer le'ele inyan hasimcha ba'avodas Hashem. Shari lechura madua nikvu shnei atmidim ba'ofen kazeh sheshivisi Hashem lנגדי samid mefia betchilas HaShulchan Aruch v'toif leiv mishta tamid mefia la'achar kol oira chaim b'soifim mamish. Shivisi Hashem lנגדי samid u'yisoid v'ikar avodas Hashem u'shum kach u'aroish v'aschol shekol oira chaim. V'kach tzarech liyos gam legabe v'toiv leiv mishta tamid ki gam hasimcha yisoy b'avodas Hashem hachem etfilo b'chsa shachar. So as soon as you get up in the morning and you need a daven, are you supposed to do it sadly? Are you supposed to do it like you're being forced to? You're supposed to do it with simcha also. So just like at the beginning of the day, you have to know Shavis Hashem Lנגדי Tamid, the same thing right away at the beginning of the day, you have to do Avodah Hashem b'Simcha. So why do you leave this for the end of Shulchan Aruch to tell you that you have to be b'Simcha if it's something I have to do constantly? Yeshloi Marsha Hezber Lakachu. B'shnei ha-Tamidim b'tchilos ha'rechaim b'soifoi. The Tamid, Shavis Havayel Lנגדי Tamid, and the Toiv Leiv Mishtah Tamid. Ein arama miskaven l'shnei inyanim elu kifi shem kechelek ma'avoyas Hashem chelek mikiyum ha'shulchan aruch el kavanosa hi l'inyanim elu kifi shehem mahavim alef hagdama l'fnei aschos kiyum ha'shulchan aruch beis siyum la'achar gemar kiyum ha'shulchan aruch. It's not about the doing of the mitzvahs, it's how you start off the mitzvahs, what is the yesod of the mitzvahs, and what happens when you finish the mitzvah. That's why one thing is at the beginning, before you start talking about the mitzvahs. And one thing is at the end, after the mitzvah. As we'll soon explain what that means, after the mitzvah. Lefnei sheyehudi maschol b'kiyum Torah mitzvahs drusha achana shel Shavis Hashem Lנגדי Tamid kabolos malchus Hashem kedivrei Chazal yikabel ov el mach shamayim tchila v'achar mekabel ov el mitzvahs. That's why we say Shema before v'hoyim shemoya tishmol mitzvosai. V'achar kach mekabel ov el mitzvahs. Once you said Shema Yisrael, once you were mekabel el mach shamayim, then you could be mekabel to do the mitzvahs. So that's why, before you start, before you begin anything, first things first. Shavis Hashem Lנגדי Tamid. Kabbalah zu shel oil machs Hashem tzrich aliyas begoli lefnei shemaschila avodah shel kiyum haTorah v'mitzvah poil la'acher sha'yehudi kvar shakua b'kiyum Torah mitzvahs ein murgeshes etzli begoli kabbalah soil malchus el kabbalah soil mitzvahs. Kabbalah say al atzmai l'kaim b'poil as gzeres hamelech v'tzivuyav. One of the examples is when a person is sitting and learning. Before he sits down and learns, he has to recognize that he's learning Hashem's Torah. Shavis Hashem Lנגדי Tamid. But when he's learning a piece of Gemara, he's learning a Maimer Chassidus, he's learning a pasuk Chumash, he has to be thinking not Shavis Hashem Lנגדי Tamid. He has to be thinking about what the Gemara is saying. He has to be thinking what the Chumash is saying. He has to say what the Maimer is saying. So the Shavis Hashem Lנגדי Tamid is a introduction, a preface. Before you even start learning, you go on the foundation. I'm learning Hashem's Torah. I have to place Hashem constantly before me. Now I'm doing that, so the Shavisi is not in forefront in my mind. What happens when a person is finished doing whatever mitzvah they're doing? La'acher mikein b'siyum la'acher avodah magiyim li'idei v'toiv leiv mishtah Tamid la'acher siyum avodah ba'aschar ha'la avodah. What's the best reward on the avodah? The joy that I had, the enjoyment and the pleasure. I can say, wow, what a mitzvah I had. Shezoi Simcha sheyesh liYehudi al kach shekiyim esamut la'alav v'izkara v'ayidei kach al HaKadosh Baruch. Mitzvah melashon tzavsa v'chibur. It's about joining it together with Hashem. And it's also something that not necessarily you can have when you're doing the mitzvah. Let's say you're trying to help someone out. Someone has a problem. And they're busy discussing with you a problem. Are you going to burst out into laughter? I'm happy that I'm having the opportunity to do the mitzvah of helping you out. This person is suffering. You're not going to go ahead and be laughing and happy with that. B'shas ma'aseh, you have to be totally focused on what he needs and how you can help. And you have to empathize with him. You have to feel what he's feeling and so on. Afterwards, once I was able to help him and so on, so then I have this happiness and this joy that I have this simcha that I did what I was able to do, and I had this unbelievable opportunity to connect with the Eibishter and so on. L'simcha zu niten lagia begoli rak la'achar siyum avodah. Omnam gam avodah atzma tzricha le'osis mitoch simcha ibdus Hashem b'simcha. Ach mikiven she'oz osaka Yehudi b'avodasis Hashem. So just like we said about Shavisi Hashem Lנגדי Tamid, the person can have going off in his mind Shavisi Hashem Lנגדי Tamid if he's trying to talk to somebody and trying to help him out. He's busy thinking about ideas. How am I going to help out this yid from his problem? The same thing, a person can't be in a state of Ivdos Hashem b'simcha while he's doing the mitzvah. Who ain't mesugal is chader kulay besimcha mishlemes. Ku hu chosh by his man tchusha shekabal soil yiras Hashem anidreshes b'shas avodas Hashem. Rak la'achar siyum ha'avodah ma'ifia ha'simcha ba'oifen goli v'chayderes oilov b'mloi ha'utzmos. So now he's going to give a very simple example from something that Chassidus always talks about on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, it's about Kabbalas Malchusi. It's about Tamlichuni Aleichem, making Hashem a king over us. Even though, like everything else, it has to be besimcha, but the simcha is covered over them. B'doim elinyonim amefim b'chodesh Tishrei hachodesh haklali. B'rosh Hashanah v'chulayom manaroim kayemes avodah shel v'gilu berada koloymar omnam kayemes as simcha v'af simcha gedoyla b'yoser alam lachas hakadosh baruch hu lemelech ach hasimcha melubeshes b'yira v'gilu berada. Just to give an example of what this means. Let's say a person didn't have an opportunity to go into Yechidus to the Rebbe, and all of a sudden he's given the opportunity. You can go into the Rebbe, a private audience, a private Yechidus with the Rebbe. So obviously, he's going to be so happy when he's there in the Yechidus. But still, a Chassid, when he's standing in front of the Rebbe, is standing with Yiras Harayim. He's in awe of the Rebbe. He's not dancing in his place. After Yechidus, there used to be called something called a Yechidus dance, the Frierdiker Rebbe records. After Yechidus, Chassidim used to go out in a dance. Because I don't know, I don't remember because I was too young when Yechidus stopped, so I don't know. But it could be Elter Chassidim did it.
What was the question?
If by the Rebbe also they had this Yechidus dance after the Yechidus when Chassidim came out that they danced.
I think that in some people.
Some people. It was probably some people from.
Maybe it's a shame.
So again, what do you see? Only after the experience, after the Yechidus, that's the time when you could be besimcha. So during Rosh Hashanah, when we're busy being makabel al machusay aleim, we can't be besimcha. The simcha is concealed. At the end of Tishrei, Gilei HaSimcha b'siyum HaMoedim. B'Chag HaSukkos, we are celebrating the Gilu Berada that was there on Rosh Hashanah. Zman Simchaseinu b'ikar b'soifim mamish b'Simchas Torah. We are celebrating and enjoying and being b'simcha over the fact that the Tamlichuni Aleichem took place on Rosh Hashanah. So just like in Tishrei, we have the Simcha is concealed at the beginning and is only revealed at the end, the same thing in Shulchan Aruch, in the day, in the Mitzvos that we do. V'kach gam binyoneinu, hasimcha gluya hi la'achar hashlomes ha'avodah, mamish b'soif oirach hayim. It doesn't mean that's the last thing to do in oirach hayim. It means, when does the Simcha come out begoli? When does the Tov Leiv Mishnah Tamid reveal itself? At the end of any avodah that we do. When we finish davening, or when we finish learning, or we finish doing a mitzvah, that's the time when the Simcha comes out. That's why those halachas of Tov Leiv Mishnah Tamid is at the end of Oirach Hayim. Not that you have to wait till Purim Katan to have Tov Leiv Mishnah Tamid.
What's the point to be happy after the mitzvah? I think the point should be to be happy during the mitzvah.
It doesn't mean, he doesn't say that it's totally not happy. He says, he can't go out into a dance and he can't be all like going, over the top. There is a simcha, but the simcha is melubish inside. It's like, again, if you're sitting and learning, if you're too busy being happy about, wow, I'm sitting and learning, wow, I can be miskasher and chachmasim and tzayni is baruch, he won't be able to concentrate. The same thing with every mitzvah. A person, the simcha is on a lower key, on a lower level than the way it comes out and it bursts out. Once he's completed the mitzvah, then he's besimcha. And the truth is, you see this by any type of mitzvah.
It sounds like the simcha that after mitzvah, it sounds like something that is פועל יוצא. זה לא עבודה, זה פועל יוצא. אני סיימתי, עשיתי מצווה.
If the mitzvah was done with the avodah gedola that a person is supposed to have, that really should have a tchusha simcha even b'shas ma'isa the mitzvah, so then it'll burst out afterwards. In other words, of course, it comes from the mitzvah b'shas ma'isa, and even before doing the mitzvah, that you're living with the mitzvahs and that you're inspired by the mitzvahs and you're excited to do the mitzvahs. So therefore, the poil yoitza is that afterwards you can finally express it. Just to give a silly example, when do we dance by the wedding? By the chuppah? No. The chuppah is the actual marriage. The chuppah is very serious, whatever. When are we able to do the whole dancing, celebration, and the meal and everything? After they're married and everything is done, the Shabbat B'rot, it's total. That's when you have the dancing. But it's not. But it's not the pshat is that there was nothing happy going on by the wedding, and not up till now, and now all of a sudden when we went to the hall and started dancing, that's when the happiness started. But like you're saying, it's a poil yoitze of the chuppah. So in other words, the chuppah is a joyous event, and the same thing, the mitzvah is a happy event, and it's very excitable, but there's too much going on to express that excitement outward. And then once everything else is finished, then I express it outside.
Well, why you emphasize the word besof? It means in the final age when
No.
The end of the mitzvah.
Why is it at the end? Why is it at the end of Avodah Chaim? L'poil toiv leiv mishta tamid.
Where it's written.
Toiv leiv mishta tamid is written at the end of Avodah Chaim. Why is it written at the end of Avodah Chaim? To show us this idea that after the Avodah. In other words, שויתי Hashem לנגדי Tamid is before Avodah Chaim. Toiv leiv mishta tamid is after Avodah Chaim. Like he said, he gave the Hakdama right away at the beginning. So before you even start doing the Avodah, you have to have the שויתי Hashem. After you're done, whatever Avodah you're doing, whatever mitzvah you're doing, after that, you have the Toiv Leiv Mishnah Tamid that expresses itself in the joy. Vav. V'zeh ha'hevdel ben ha-simcha shalom medaber ha-Rambam. Like we spoke about before, that the Rambam speaks about at the end of Hilchos Lulav, lebein zu shalom medaber ha-Ramah, in the halachas of Purim Katan, Toiv Leiv Mishnah Tamid. Ha-Rambam b'soif Hilchos Lulav, Eimer lagabe simcha shal mitzvah. Ha-simcha sheyismach adam ba'asiyas ha-mitzvah, v'simcha zu nevas ma-simcha yisera shoysa b'chag ha-Sukkos, shehi chelik v'mitzvos ha-simcha b'moedim k'fi shoymer sham ha-Rambam. Ach b'Shulchan Aruch meduber al toiv leiv mishta tamid, al ha-simcha b'fnei atzma, al kach shehu Yehudi, v'kosher tamid al HaKadosh Baruch Hu, simcha mefia begoli b'siyum ha'avodah k'leil. It's not about the details of the mitzvah, which is more the Rambam, but it's about the very fact that I'm connected with Hashem and I can express that connection through mitzvahs. The simcha zu, this type of simcha that comes at the conclusion of the avodah, misbatas b'miyuchad b'mashmoy shel Purim Katan. B'mei simcha shel kol hashana kula yesh mitzvahs halachas minhag makshurim aleim. Kach sh'asimcha mushpas gam mit chushes acheres habois lebitu b'avoyes Hashem asiyas mitzvah kiyum minne v'chadoyme. Afilu simchas hapurim shetzrich aliyas ad lo yada eina makifas kol hayom kula. He can't be in a state of ad lo yada for 24 hours of Purim. Yesh mitzvahs noisafes b'yom zeh. Hadorshes dafki yada kidlael kris amegila mishlech manas matas lavyanim va'adrab noigim lasas sudas Purim rak la'achrei mincha. Why? Because you don't want to interrupt all the other things you have to do. Vel umazos bepurim katan ein mitzvahs miyuchados v'yom ze nivdal b'yom acherim. In what? The only difference that there is between Purim Katan and any other day in the year is just Simcha. Even the regular Purim has other things that are going on. Purim Katan is pure Simcha. Yoytze mekach shebesimcha shel Purim Katan ein mu'ravim shum inyanim acherim shel avodas Hashem zoi Simcha b'Torah. This is, I think, B'chlal, a chiddush of the Rebbe. The Rebbe speaks about it in other places also, about Simcha b'Ta'arasa. In most places where you look about the idea of Simcha, it speaks about Simcha Shel Mitzvah. And like the Rambam, we had the word Simcha Shel Mitzvah, and in other places, the Rebbe takes it, seems to be that the Rebbe is taking it a step further. Simcha b'taharasa, pure simcha. But of course, it doesn't mean hailalis. It means the joy that I'm a yid. Shaloi asani goy. The joy that I'm connected with Hashem. The joy that Hashem gave me mitzvahs to reveal that connection. So which day, which Yom Tov expresses this the most? That the simcha is not because of a particular activity, not connected with a particular detail. That's Purim Katan. The fizi yesh levayrus divrei Ramah b'soifoi b'toiv like Mishnah Tamid. Ach yesh lahagdim v'loymar al soif divrei Ramah mekol makim yar b'ktsas b'suda oimer ataz. The Taz and the Magen Avram, they're the two main commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. Ba'agot hashbatzim et kufa eiches kosav diyesh laharbis. V'Rabbeinu Yechiel mePariz rogel laharbis lahazim b'nei adam k'mashmois loshna Mishnah ein bein other chulu. The Mishnah says that there's no difference between other Rishon and other Sheni. That just the halachas of Purim like Mikra Megillah and so on. But Simcha, there's no difference between. It comes out. If you look into the expression of the Mishnah, it comes out there's no difference in Simcha between other Rishon and other Sheni. So according to the Taz is going with the view, yes, full force Simcha on Purim Katan also. That's what the Taz says. Mekach moving, Shataz Soiver, Shebedivrei Haramah v'toiv leiv Mishtah Tamid, Kavanasa hi lirmoi she'ein dai b'yar b'ktsas b'suda, kvi she'amar lifnechein, el she'yesh laharbis b'suda, b'simcha mein oder sheni, ein bein oder. A person's suda on Purim Katan should be like the suda of Purim, not just b'mar b'ktsas. That's what the Taz holds that Ramah is trying to say by adding the pasuk Toiv Leiv Mishtah Tamid. If that's what the Ramah wants to say, why doesn't he say it? Why doesn't he say it openly? The Nidrish Hezber Madua in the Ramah Mitzayim Mefurish Yesh Laharbis B'Simcha V'Rak Roimez Lakach B'Toiv Leiv Mishtah Tamid, and then you need to have the Taz to go ahead and be medayik and come to the conclusion that it means to have a Suda like Purim. Yesh loymash is a bedoyme lahavdele adargis from the moitzim b'chayvus hasimcha b'chlal. Hasimcha b'moyedim chayvim in HaTorah like it says samachta b'chagecha. The fact that we have to be happy on Yom Tov, that's a mitzvah d'oraisa. Then there's a simcha kshura l'nischa mayim b'chag HaSukkos. Simchas beis HaShe'eva. There's a special simcha on Sukkos because they would pour the water on the karbanos in addition to what they used to all year round pour wine. Pouring the water, nischamayim, is something that doesn't say openly in Torah Shebeksav. It's halach l'moishe mesinai. She'eina mefurish behedyu b'Torah Shebeksav rak midrabon asamchu akroi. They found support from the Chumash without saying it openly in the Chumash. Shezoy simchas beis ha'she'eva. So that's the next level. There's a simcha that's openly in the Torah and a simcha that's medivrei Kabbalah. Or halach l'maish mesinai. V'yesh simcha shal ha'kafas v'shmini atzeres Simchas Torah she'eina chayva achmed af midivrei soifrim. Even the Chachamim did not say that there's a special simcha on Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. Ela minig bolvad. It's only a minig, like the Ramah brings down v'yesh noyegim to make a kafas with the Torah and so on. Interestingly enough, even though it seems to be going down, Min HaTorah, Halach l'Moshe Mesinai, and Minig, which is more happy? Which is the greatest simcha? Seemingly the lowest one. Well, the mice on the Roim Simchas Beis HaSheva Gedoyle Yoser Simcha Yeseda Loma Simchas Yom Tov B'Chlal. That's only Halach l'Moshe Mesinai. V'Simchas HaKafi Yaf Gedoyle Yoser K'Minig Yisrael. Ba'oid asher b'simchas beis ha'sheva yesh havdil b'nei Yehudim b'toich ha'simcha lo haya ois nois ala gedolim v'anshe maisa. Only the great ones would actually participate in the simcha. V'ilu kol ha'am boim liris l'shmoya simchas beis ha'sheva. But the haresha b'simchas ha'akafas mishtatim kol Yisrael. So you see the seemingly lower level of the source and the shoydish, the higher the simcha is. Umevur al kach, the Alter Rebbe explains this. Shehi on the sentence, Kichol shal simcha amuka yoser. harbe yoser kach poiches toikef achiyuv v'asimcha ba ma'yehudi atzmi. B'doim al-lamayla shel divrei seifrim al divrei Torah me-divrei Chazal arevim al-lai divrei seifrim kavivim al-lai divrei seifrim kasher Yisrael mekablim al-atzmam siyagim v'chumras she'enam ksuvim b'mefurish b'torah b'ksav nikeres ha-chavivus ha-simcha v'atainug sheyesh lahem b'kiyum rotzna eli. So how does that apply over here? U'be'inyan neinu Hasimcha shola kayamas chayvim fresh b'toira k'loim ha'sheniten l'chayiv b'as kulam b'ishin shave m'chicha shi behesem l'maylas ha'adam sheyeshna afilu eitz ha'apachas sheba'adam. Hasimcha yisera shel simchas beis ha'she'evak shurel nischa mayim shola ein chayvim fresh b'toira shebeksav matzbi al simcha mukha v'gdoyle yoser. Va'akafes she'einon chayva af midrabanan el minek belvad Mevatoi simcha muka oid yoser haba mitzad Yisrael shehem chidshua v'hiniguha. So the Rebbe says, like an Israeli taught me this expression, hafuch al hafuch, I think. Just the opposite. Dafke, because it's only a minig, that makes the simcha so much greater and deeper. Because it's not coming from outside of me. It's not coming because someone told me to do it. It's only a minig. It's coming from within me. Since it's coming from within me, it's so much deeper and so much stronger. V'kach, v'af yoyser mekach. L'gabi Purim Katan, harama maybe it's an inyan shol laharbis b'simcha rak remez v'sipur dvarim. He doesn't say it, you should do it. He just says, there's a pasuk, toiv leiv dish Tamid. Kipirish ataz. Why does he bring it in this type of way? Mishum shezoi dargen nailas kol kach shel simcha she'ein Allah chayva meforeshes b'Shulchan Aruch. Af loy keminig. Bedoimel a minig ha'kafish min yatzeres ch'mastoyre she'ein mefia b'Shulchan Aruch ach mefia b'kolzis b'ramah. The Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber, the Maran does not bring down the minig of ha'kafis. You hear this? The Mechaber in Shulchan Aruch, Maran, does not bring down about a kafis. Where does it bring down? Esh in the Ramah. V'ach mefia b'kol zeis b'Ramah, k'dvarav v'Ramah, v'koyrin yom tevachrin Simchas Torah, levishe smechin v'oizen b'sudas Mishnah l'gemara shel Torah, v'oid nagul l'hakim sifrei ha'Torah, v'akol mishum Simcha. So it's dafke the Ramah that brings it down. Ki minig shemuva b'Ramah, who gam kein din v'chayva. So even the yesh noyagim is still very powerful. So in Purim Katan, the Ramah didn't even bring down yesh noyagim, because then it's higher than a minute. He brought down yesh noyagim, but he said ve'ein noyagim came. Right. So that means we don't pass when it's a minig. It doesn't even have the taikif of a din. That's because it's higher than even a minig and even a din. V'yesh loimer shezayis kidul ha'el mishum shesimchas Purim Katan ni b'doim l'simcha ba l'siyum v'la'achar avodah shehi me'al avodah b'meila hi me'al oifin kolshu shel chiyuv simcha zu ba mitzad Yisrael b'milim acheres ilu ha'yotzivu yaminig al simcha zu harei she'etzem uvda zu shemashmu'usa she'asimcha yichelik mechayves kim ha'Shulchan Aruch. Then the simcha would also already have yira in it, because I got to do it. I got to make sure to do it. And there's some people that are this way. They're very nervous. Did I get it right? Was I makif the bima enough times? Did I, whatever. By them, every single thing is like with that sitternish, with a pachad, with a ema and yira. So if it would be Allah and Shulchan Aruch that says you got to be besimcha and purim, I have someone like that writes me emails. Did I do it enough? Did I get it? So Purim Katan is not that way. So he says, Yashloimar shalachein simcha zu. Dafke this simcha of Purim Katan, he achanu lesimcha shala'asad lavik. Visha oimra magen avram al divrei Ramah, v'toiv leiv mishtah Tamid. So he says, what is the toiv leiv mishtah Tamid hinting at? Besimchais mitzvos alekeinu lahamid az yimalis chakpinu. It's to make and come about the time when then our mouths will be filled with joy. By doing simcha now, by having the Toiv Leiv Mishtah Tamid, it brings the Simcha of the Geula, Yaakov. La'asid laviti simchas olam al roisham, the everlasting simcha, v'akavani gam simcha tamidis, v'simcha b'friyatzma, not just simcha shel mitzvah, but just the very simcha of being a yid. V'lakach magiyah ma'idei safa b'simcha b'zman Golus. How do we reach that simcha of Mashiach's time? The simcha b'taharasa, through simcha in the time of Golus, or ba'ofen shel mailim b'kodesh, gam b'kodesh shel toiv leiv mishtah Tamid, to go up higher and higher in the toiv leiv mishtah Tamid. V'zeh mevi b'mheru emeinu mamish simchas olam al rosham.
So let's go, guys. And since it's no year, the simcha is so high that you won't put the